Are we ready to go?
Go for it.
Well, Jordan, here we are. We are beginning a new podcast of sorts where we're going to explore some topics. Why don't we, since people are listening for the first time, how did we get to this point? During the pandemic, we had a little video show that we did here at First Trinity with Pastor Chuck and myself chatting with Chuck, and kind of came time for that to end. And now, how did we get here?
Well, first, nerd alert, was we discovered while on chatting with Chuck that we would get off on tangents about fascinating things about church history or structure, theology, blah, 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 which maybe wasn't for a fully general audience, but there was definitely a market for it, per se, of people who would be interested in more depth Christian fun facts. Do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, well, I think, it was we had a kind of this because you guest hosted several times on Chatting with Chuck, and one of the pieces of feedback we heard was people actually enjoyed the tangents when we got into random things and whatnot. And so we decided we wanted to make something a little more focused, a little more intentional about exploring some of the reasons we do the things we do, which we've been working on here at First Trinity for a while now with things in the bulletin, talking about the history of our worship practices and giving context and things like that. But there's this segment of population that is probably engaged with church in some kind of capacity. Maybe they're at a liturgical church like ours. Maybe they're at a non-liturgical church that doesn't observe some of these same practices, but they're curious about why do we do the things we do? What do they mean? And perhaps more importantly, and maybe most important of all, is like, what does that mean for me today? Because here I am, a 21st century Christian. Is that what we're in? 21st, right?
Yes.
21st century Christian. How is my life different than a first century follower of Christ? And practices that began back then, or maybe second, third, fourth centuries, I don't even necessarily fully understand it. My context of life is a little different than theirs. My understanding of things is very different from their understanding of things. And so how do we bridge that gap from the early church and practices and customs to the modern church? And maybe we have opportunity to explore what are some of the modern practices that the church has instituted following that tradition of instituting practices and rituals and things that happen all the time that point us back to Jesus. And so we may have a chance to go back and forth between some of the older practices, some newer practices, and explore some of those things.
We could talk about PowerPoint slides.
We could talk about PowerPoint slides. You know what I was thinking the other day about PowerPoint slides?
Please tell.
I knew you would be interested in this.
Yeah.
I was thinking, this past Sunday was Trinity Sunday, and I don't know when you're listening to the podcast, but this was, we're recording right after Trinity Sunday in 2023. And we did the Athanasian Creed at the early service.
Right.
And it had the Trinity leaf symbol on the bottom, because each of our PowerPoint slides all have a picture on the bottom that corresponds with that part of the service. So the Agnus Dei has a lamb, which is, Agnus Dei is Latin for Lamb of God. But I got to thinking, we have Pentecost slides that are all Holy Spirit themed with different colors, and I was thinking I should do a Trinity Sunday set, or someone should do a Trinity Sunday set, and it's all the Trinity symbol, since it is a somewhat major festival. Though it might be considered a minor festival. We'll get into that in a little bit.
Ooh.
But I don't know. It's interesting. I read something that it might not be considered a major festival.
Geeks.
Interesting. Okay. Well, so that kind of brings us to the point of the day.
Yes.
So today we're talking. This is our first episode, and we thought we would talk about church calendars, right? And why did we choose this topic? I don't even know why we chose this topic.
For one thing, we have a really great calendar in the church office that's got the whole wheel going, and so it's a great conversation starter. So I feel like we've had several conversations about the church calendar. So then we were looking for things to talk about. It was sort of a natural starting point, and there's so many room for tangents off of this.
Yeah, if you've never seen the church calendar in the office, you can Google like circular church calendar, maybe would probably get you to that, or circular liturgical calendar perhaps. It's different than the normal calendar, which you're moving left to right, and it's you're kind of like winding your way around the circle. And
Sundays are on the outside.
Oh yeah, on ours, Sundays are on the outside. Actually, it has all the days of the year because
Yep.
it's Sunday on the outside, and you work your way in on a spoke of a wheel, and then you go to the next spoke, and you kind of Sunday again, and you work your way in.
One of my favorite things is when people are in the office and they want to like tell me about their vacation days or something, and they're like, "Oh, a calendar. I will indicate on the calendar where I'm talking about." I'm like, "Not that day. Not that one."
Yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
don't get it.
Yeah, because your tendency is to go radial,
Yep.
like around the edge, but then you're just like, I'm just gone for 8 Sundays. Like, wow, that's quite the vacation. Nice.
And you're coming back each day in between.
I know, right? You
Right.
you travel back for Monday through Saturday?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. I always find myself going like this. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to read the calendar and I'm twisting my head. The worst is the bottom half of the calendar, which is what the bottom half is the non-festivals, right? I think Easter or
Yeah.
Advent starts on the left. It doesn't start at the top like a clock. It actually starts at what, 9 o'clock on a clock?
Well,
Does Advent
Probably.
start on the left? I think Advent's on the left, isn't it?
I think so. You're throwing me off because you're left
Oh,
over my left right
I'll-
now. So
I'll
I'm like,
pre-
that's not it.
I'll pretend I'm talking to the congregation. So when I have to talk to the congregation,
Yes.
I got to switch sides. And if I'm talking to audio people, I have to use left and right because this is a video podcast too.
Yes.
But
That's true.
it could also just be that you're listening on audio. What? I know, right? So Advent is on the left.
Yep.
Unless you're watching on video, then it's over here on this left.
Yeah. And then last year, what I would do, because we had one of these last year too, is partway through the year, I turned it to try and help people out.
Oh, that's kind of you.
I'm a very helpful person. Yeah.
Yes, that's kind of you. Yeah. All right, so we're talking about the church calendar and the church for a long time. Did you get a date for when we? I mean, I've found bits and pieces of when some of the seasons started, but
Oh, you're so good.
at some point, we kind of adopted this calendar. And liturgical churches are more likely to use it than more like newer churches that don't follow a liturgical tradition. And the idea is that you're working through this narrative of Scripture, and that the calendar is different than the civil calendar. So here in America, the civil calendar begins on January 1st and goes through December 31st. Very easy to follow, right? We're in 2023 and you begin and you end. Okay. So the church calendar though is a little different, right? And why don't we so we're all on the same page. Why don't you, are you comfortable going through the calendar and tell us what the church calendar is?
Yes. So the church calendar roughly follows the life and times of Jesus. That's how it's structured around. So we start in Advent as we're waiting for baby Jesus. And as a side, we're also in that time of waiting for the second coming of Jesus. So they're tied together. And then we move into Christmas, yay. Epiphany, which is where we celebrate the different way God reveals himself to us. The sort of dramatic situation there is the wise men encountering Jesus, which also is tied in with signal of the Gentile, like Jesus being for the Gentiles as well as the Jews. Fun fact about Epiphany. Then we go into Lent, time to repent and remember. It's Jesus's final days leading up to the crucifixion, leading into Easter. And then, yay, Easter. And then so afterwards it's Pentecost, and then it's the time of the church, which is also known as the time where the Sundays at time after Pentecost. How is it phrased there?
It's like it's the Sunday after Pentecost. So like the second Sunday after
Yes.
Pentecost is Trinity Sunday.
Yes. What's the name of this? Do we just say the time? It's time after Pentecost.
So there's
Right.
there's numerous phrases for it. Some people use ordinary time.
Oh yeah.
It's the non-festival season. It's the season after Pentecost, the time of the church. Different phrases for that. There's two designations because there's the first Sunday the first Sunday after Pentecost, I guess, would be Trinity Sunday because
Right.
it's Pentecost, and then the first Sunday, or is it the second Sunday?
It's called the second Sunday after Pentecost.
It is the second Sunday.
Yes.
The first Sunday counts because it's like biblical time. So this is the
Right.
second Sunday after Pentecost was Trinity Sunday.
We know Trinity Sunday this year
That's
at
what's
least
confusing.
was the first Sunday after Pentecost. But we just said, yeah, it's Trinity Sunday.
Well, it's always in a civil calendar thinking. It's always the first Sunday after Pentecost. Mm-hmm. Because we don't count time quite the same way.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my school calling, so I can continue.
Okay.
So we'll have to look at this because I think it might be the second Sunday. Like it's, do you have the little liturgical, the lectionary book that I give that sometimes I print things from? It has a heading at the top there.
Oh, okay. Well, I know that
I don't know either.
this
This
coming
is-
Sunday, which is Sunday for us after Trinity Sunday, is the second Sunday after Pentecost because Lutheran Service Builder tells me so.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Lutheran Service Builder is a good authority on this matter. So, first Sunday after Pentecost is Trinity Sunday. And then we're into the second Sunday after Pentecost,
Yes.
which that's one way we talk about it. We also sometimes call them propers.
Oh,
Yeah. Did you know that?
I've heard that word before, but I've
'Cause-
never asked what it meant.
So, this is second Sunday after Pentecost, but it's also proper 5, which we skipped propers 1 through 4.
Oh, why?
Why? Good question. We'll get to that.
Okay, great.
All right, so there's 2 halves of the year. We had the Advent starts the church year, and we followed the life of Christ through his resurrection, ascension, the coming of the Holy Spirit, and then we entered the second half of the year, which we said had a number of names, but we
Yep.
call it typically the time of the church.
That's what I've mostly heard.
Yes, that's what we use in our bulletins. We call it the time of the church. Ordinary time, I think, might be a little more Catholic in name, but yeah, I like the time of the church because you get the life and times of Christ, and then the mission of the church out in the world is the second half of the year. Okay, so that's the church calendar in a nutshell. Now, what is significant about this? Maybe why don't we go through? Let's just kind of zero in a little bit more on the first half of the year, that Advent through Pentecost, and we'll go season by season. You mentioned some of the stuff in your little summary. So Advent, we had the dual focus,
Yep.
right? Which again, what was the two focus or two foci of Advent?
I think it's focuses.
Focuses, not foci.
I'm pretty sure that's focuses. But now I don't like saying that word. Okay, so one is we are looking back in history, waiting for Jesus' coming as a baby. We're waiting for Christmas. And then the second layer is that we're in the mindset of the people today of waiting for Jesus' second coming for the acts of revelation and whatnot.
Yeah, so Advent is like appearing or coming from Latin adventus, and I looked that up. Yeah, see, and it interesting. So I don't know if you saw. I found this. It said that typically the first 3 weeks or 2 weeks, sometimes depending which cycle you're in, but the beginning of the Advent season is much more focused on the second coming of Christ. It has what we would say an eschatological flavor to it. The end times. Eschatological is like the end times.
Oh, okay.
And so that's that second coming of Christ. But by the fourth Sunday of Advent, we're into much more direct prophecies concerning Christmas, the birth of Jesus. It's the angels announcing, Gabriel announcing to Mary. Usually somewhere in that window, maybe the third Sunday of Advent, you've got Mary's visit to Elizabeth, things like that. You've got stories like John the Baptist preparing the way for Jesus, which is obviously post-birth. This is as Jesus is beginning his ministry, and that would be more of a thinking of second coming, not the birth of Jesus, since the event is taking place after his birth by many years. So, yeah, okay. So Advent is this time of waiting, perhaps, of preparing for Christ's arrival in his birth and second coming. Christmas, then, obviously, is the first great festival of the church, and we're going to get into there's greater and lesser festivals, I think.
Oh, cool.
So the first great festival of the church is Easter, or I'm sorry,
Christmas.
Christmas.
You're getting ahead of yourself.
Yes, I'm getting way ahead of myself. Christmas, and that's because I was thinking the world is already ahead of us.
Yes.
Because Christmas is a strange thing in the church. Because when we think about differences between the church calendar and the civil calendar, right? Christmas is a very different time period. So Christmas in the worldly calendar, where would you say Christmas begins in the civil calendar?
Oh, if you're lucky, the Black Friday the day after Thanksgiving is when
Yes.
people are kicking it off. Some people wait until ABC says it's 25 days Christmas on December 1st, but
Yeah, because actually we should even back up. Advent calendars are a thing, which
yes.
Advent is the 25 days, 24 days leading up to Christmas in December. But sometimes Advent can begin in November.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's 4 Sundays prior to Christmas.
We really need to get on liturgically accurate chocolate calendars. I feel like if we could leverage that, we could really get more people on board with true
That
Advent.
would be that's a solution, I think.
That's something they have the upper hand on is the chocolate.
Do you think who makes the most Advent calendars? Are we talking like Nestle or Hershey's? Is that who puts that out?
Honestly, I've never known the brand of mine.
Okay.
They
It's
just
probably
hear.
cheap brand chocolate. We've done Advent calendars with cheese before from Aldi.
Ooh.
Yeah, they went a little downhill this past year.
They repeated cheeses,
There
what
were
I
a lot
heard.
of repeat cheeses. Yes, it was much better the first time we did it. But anyway, the civil calendar, Christmas is like Advent's just not even a thing because Christmas begins, if we're lucky, after Thanksgiving. But even sometimes before that, you get your Christmas music on the radio, all the Christmas decorations, which obviously they observe it different. And then when does Christmas end for the civil calendar, would you say?
For some, like right after Christmas, start packing it all up. At best, I think you've got until New Year's. Is like after that, if you have the lights up, you are falling behind.
I would probably guess that's probably accurate. I'd say most people, New Year's is the cutoff for Christmas. Yeah, and so in the church calendar, though, we keep it a little differently. Advent is that season leading in, and Christmas doesn't actually begin until Christmas Day.
Right.
And how many days of Christmas?
12 days of Christmas.
12 days of Christmas,
Plenty of time for birds,
like the song.
just like the song.
Wouldn't it be miserable, though, to get all those gifts for Christmas?
It really would be bad.
Like, who wants all those dudes drumming in your living room all that time?
I actually don't want any guys drumming in my living room.
Is that how many? Is it 12? Are they the last? Are the drummers drumming the last? I don't even know the
No, I
12
don't-
days of Christmas. I mean, I could probably figure it out.
I
if
used
had
to know.
There's pipers piping.
There
too.
are pipers. It's a very musical Christmas.
It is very
You
musical.
need lots of newspaper for all those birds around.
Indeed.
There's geese involved.
I feel like this would be a funny movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Somebody actually gets the 12 gifts, the 12 days of Christmas.
I feel like that could be an episode in like an alien acclimating to life on Earth, and he hears a song, and he's like, "This is how we'll woo my human love
Yes.
interest is to give her a bunch of birds." That's tangent from the tangent, though.
Yeah. This is how we ended up on a podcast
That's how you.
because we
podcast,
have tangents.
Yeah.
Okay, so Christmas is 12 days. Then we
Yeah.
had Epiphany, which you said was Christ appearing to the nations.
Yes.
Takes place on January
6th.
6th. Yeah, 12 days after Christmas.
Oh, good job, Jordan. I just had that too.
Yeah. And typically the readings for Epiphany Sunday are the wise men who brought 3 gifts.
Oh, an unspecified number.
It's an
of what is that?
unspecified number of wise men.
Magi.
Magi. Yes.
So maybe one of them was like showed up late and was like, "We were supposed to bring gifts to this. Can't I just put my name on yours?"
Well, yeah, we always talk about 3 wise men because there were 3 gifts, but it
I've
doesn't actually
got 4
say.
siblings, and I can tell you, we don't always have 5 gifts
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like younger brother forgot. You put your name on theirs.
Indeed.
I shouldn't throw Ben under the bus. It's not always bad.
It's not always. Yeah, so okay, then Epiphany, then you got a season of Epiphany.
Yep. Which Epiphany is a focus on the wise men and also Christ being for all people.
Right. It's that
that
Christ
dual-
for the whole world, not
Yeah.
just for the Jews. And this is where we kind of get into some of the proper kind of language because now everything's been pretty much set. I mean, the days of Advent are a little strange because it's 4 Sundays prior to Christmas. So sometimes there might be 28 days of Advent, sometimes 29, sometimes whatever. But Christmas is always 12 days. And then Epiphany, and now you really get into the flexibility of the church calendar because Epiphany goes until the start of Lent, which is based on the date of Easter,
Which is based on the date of Passover. Correct?
no.
No. Oops.
I have a chart.
You have a chart!
That's not it.
Oh, I was going to say, that doesn't look very
I have
chart-like.
a chart.
Oh, okay. It's like a
So-
spreadsheet.
Do you know how they figure out the date of Easter?
I'll be honest. I thought it was something to do with the moon, but now I'm embarrassed.
It
to
is
say-
about the
Oh,
moon.
it is about the
Yes, it's. I
Okay.
wrote it down because I knew I would not remember. It was at the Council of Nicaea in 325. So
Of Nicene Creed fame?
yes, the Nicene
Okay.
Creed fame, guys.
Okay.
There was controversy in the church because the Eastern and Western churches celebrated on different days. The Eastern Church, so the Eastern Orthodox Church, they weren't separated at this point. The Eastern half of the churches were celebrating on the 14th of Nisan, which I believe was connected to Passover. And that meant that Easter could fall on any day of the week because it's like Christmas. It was the 25th of December, but this is the 14th of Nisan. It's always the same day, so that the weekday could change. And in the Western half of the church, they were always observing Easter on a Sunday. And that meant, of course, that the crucifixion was on Friday, which matched the biblical account for the
Right.
year that Jesus was crucified. Good Friday. I mean, it was Friday. And then there was the Sabbath, and then there was Sunday, which was the resurrection. And so they came up with the formula that it would be on the first Sunday after the first full moon, on or after the spring equinox, unless that was on a Sunday. Then it was 1 week later if the full moon fell on a Sunday.
Okay.
Yes. But then it got even more complicated
Oh, good.
because today we don't always celebrate Easter with our Eastern Orthodox friends.
No.
Yeah. Do you know why?
Well, I was
It says it on the chart.
because what?
They had different calendars.
We had different calendars.
We keep the Gregorian calendar, which is more precise, and they use the Julian calendar.
Oh.
Obviously less precise if ours is more precise. And so Easters don't always sync up. In fact, this coming year, ours is April 9th and theirs is April 16th. The last time we shared Easter was 2017, that the Easters lined up.
Oh.
And the next time it lines up is 2025. We'll celebrate Easter together in 2025 on April 20th.
Okay.
There you go. That was my only chart. It's not a very good visual for the stream. And do we have a place, can we flash the chart like right here in post-production?
Yeah, or it could be floating above us.
Somewhere. We'll get post-production on that.
Okay.
All right, so Epiphany season changes because of the date of Easter, but Lent, we're back to a predetermined period, which you said was how long?
It's 40 days.
40 days. Okay.
Representing 40 days that Jesus spent in the wilderness.
And?
40 days of the flood.
And?
40
Years
years
of wandering in the wilderness.
of wandering the wilderness. Yep, absolutely. Which
There you go.
you ever look that up on Google Maps? That should not have been that long of a journey at all.
Well, they could have taken a more direct route if they had been obedient to God, yes, and trusted His provision.
Couldn't we all?
It could have been a lot faster, yes. That's true, couldn't we all? Yeah. So, 40 days of Lent,
Yep.
which if you count back, well, if you count forward from Ash Wednesday to Easter Sunday, there's how many days?
I don't know.
More than 40.
More than 40. Because Sundays are little Easters.
Because Sundays are little Easter. So technically, Sundays aren't part of Lent.
Ooh.
Right, because Easter was on a Sunday, so the first resurrection. And so Easters historically have been Sundays have been little Easters, which means we don't technically observe Lent on Easter Sunday, or Sundays in...
The little Easters, which are on Sundays in
Yes.
Lent.
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Of course, we keep all the purple paraments and everything.
That's a lot of
because
work.
it is a lot of work to just swap them out for Sundays and then put them back for the rest of the days of the week when nobody's here. Well, Wednesdays are here because we have Wednesday services.
Woo.
Yeah, but we keep the liturgical color the same because it is still the season of Lent, but we kind of say, surprise, it's still a resurrection coming.
We just can't help ourselves.
I know, it's
so
true.
excited.
It's true. Okay, then Easter is a predetermined length. I mean, it's a consistent length, right?
Because it's one day. Well, there's a season of Easter.
There is
Yes.
a season
Yeah,
of Easter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you know how long the season of Easter is?
Oh, I do.
She's
Maybe I
got it.
don't. Maybe I don't.
Maybe she doesn't. It is
4
7...
weeks? 7 weeks. Oh, it's a week of weeks.
A week of weeks, yes.
Yeah,
Celebrating
did know
a week of weeks. It's like it's a big celebration.
It's a big
Like, let's
deal.
take a whole week of weeks to celebrate.
Yeah. 7
Yes.
times 7 times
Absolutely.
of Easter. Yeah.
And then that follows with Pentecost on day 50.
Cool.
Pentecost is Greek for 50th.
Oh,
Pentecostus.
that does make sense.
There you go.
Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah. And so then that ends the standard kind of predetermined time, and then you get back into the time after Pentecost, which is flexible. And so we have the propers. Back to the propers.
Okay.
So because there are more weeks some years than others, you've got more propers than you can use every year. If Easter is the earliest it possibly can be, then you can use all of the propers for the time after Pentecost. the Sundays
28.
after. Yes. 22 to 28, right?
22
is
to
that the
28.
range? Yeah, so it could be as short as 22 weeks and as long as 28.
That's quite the range.
Yes. And the propers are coded so that proper 5 is proper 5. Like it's always the same readings for proper 5, which is this weekend's worship. But we have cut off the front half of the propers. So we want to end on the last proper, which ironically in ours is not Christ the King Sunday, but we observe Christ the King Sunday nonetheless.
Because this, wait,
Like they don't call it Christ the King Sunday in our 3-year lectionary,
weird.
right? Yeah, but we observe it as Christ the King Sunday
Okay.
because reasons.
Yep.
Why not?
Well, it's a good day.
It is a good day. Yes. Okay. Forgot to mention, Easter is the second great festival of the church. Pentecost is the third great festival. And then it said, what I read, everything else was like considered more minor festival.
Okay. All right.
So you got to wonder if Trinity Sunday is even considered a festival.
Maybe it's a feast.
Maybe. As we learned this past week, it's the only day in the church calendar, the only Sunday dedicated to a doctrine rather than the story of God working for his people. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. That's probably enough on the basics. Why do we even care?
Why do we even care?
Why do we care?
Um,
Why keep a different calendar in the church than in the world, do you think?
well, I mean, the easy answer is that we're intentionally different. And so it helps us get into a mindset of being a people set apart is is one benefit.
Yes.
Also, it helps us regularly revisit the most important Bible stories. So you don't accidentally go 4 years without talking about Easter.
Well, yeah, it gives you some anchor points. Like, it forces you into exploring subjects you might not normally do. Which I don't know. Have you ever spent extended time worshiping in a non-liturgical church?
Sort of. I went to a Wesleyan school. Now, the dean of the chapel, I think, had some love for liturgy. But in general, I think the Wesleyan church is a little less liturgical than Lutheran.
Like, did they observe seasons of the year?
Not that I noticed. We didn't have paraments.
Yeah,
At
because like
least-
I wonder,
yeah.
like if you're in a non-liturgical church, when do you talk about the baptism of Jesus or transfiguration? Like, does that happen?
I think it's just if that's what the pastor feels like
If he
preaching
feels,
on.
yeah.
That's what I read in the one article that I thought was interesting, and maybe more interesting for you as a pastor, is that it's also a form of protection against it not just being the pastor, like the church being fully subject to whatever that particular pastor is feeling. Like, you can't just throw in passive-aggressive sermons every time, because every now and then you got to talk about the baptism of Jesus, and you're like, I got to stop. Not saying that you do passive-aggressive.
No,
I mean, maybe
yeah,
you do.
Maybe I do. I don't know.
know.
That's a whole different can of worms because
That is a different can of worms.
at seminary, the first seminary that I went to, St. Catherine's across the border in Canada, they called that the pastor's hobby horse. Like, this is the one he always likes to come back to, is this particular subject. And we all have hobby horses, and we like to talk about the same topic over and over and over, which the church calendar helps prevent a little bit. Now, you can still do it, it turns out, if you're determined. You can still get your hobby horse into a lot more than it should be, like a lot more sermons than it should be. If you're determined, you're going to make it happen. But at least the liturgical calendar is a safeguard to that.
Yeah.
That's true.
Makes it a little harder.
Yeah.
It also provides unity, too, because then we're in sync with other churches. So that if, like, for instance, like, if we didn't have Christmas on a certain day, we couldn't, like, Christmas is one of those times, sorry, I'm like, Christmas is one of those times where even within different denominations, we can it's very easy to celebrate it together, and have a Christmas service, maybe even with other denominations, if that's your cup of tea, because we're all in sync on that.
Right.
And so even if they are not tracking the calendar, there's still at least some touch points where we're synced up. And then for other denominations that also follow the liturgy but aren't Lutheran, we are in sync for more of the year.
Right.
Which is kind of nice.
Yeah, because it's always funny when we're when we do our all church study, right? And we're doing a book together, and we're got sermon themes based around that subject or that book or whatever. And I'm on social media, and I see a bunch of my friends from around the country who go to other Lutheran churches, maybe work at other Lutheran churches. They're all talking about the same story, like, oh, my pastor preached on this and my pastor preached on that same thing, and yeah, we all are sharing this experience together. And I'm like sitting here in the corner, like, I'm
reading the book.
I'm left out because I'm doing this good book too, which is fine.
Yeah.
Right. And
yeah.
so we take time out to do different things like that, and it's okay to go off the lectionary, off the church calendar, because it is a man-made thing. It's got a lot of positives, but could have some pitfalls as well. So it's okay to go off. It's fancy word, adiaphora. It's neither commanded nor forbidden in the scriptures.
Oh, I did look up that word. I was waiting to use it.
Oh, well, I won't spoil it then. Pretend I did not say it.
I heard it as a noun, though, as an adiaphoron.
Adiaphoron. Yeah, adiaphora is like it is adiaphora, and this is a specific adiaphoron.
Adiaphoron. I looked up the wrong pronunciation. I looked it up too. I wrote
Adiaphora.
Adiaphora.
I've always heard it adiaphora.
Adiaphora.
Adiaphora. Yeah. Yeah, things neither commanded nor forbidden in the scriptures. So the church calendar is adiaphora. You are not a lesser Christian if you don't observe the church calendar.
Question on that, though.
Uh-oh. This is where I get in trouble.
No, here's what I'm pushing back just a little bit.
Okay.
And I realize it might not be specific to the things that we have as part of our modern church calendar. But there are times in the Bible where God tells them specifically to recognize, like Passover. He tells them every year, do this. And then there's when they cross the Jordan, I think, and they pile up the 12 stones.
Mm-hmm.
And
memorial
then
stones, yeah.
What was that?
Yeah, the memorial stones.
The memorial stones. And then God's like, hey, talk about this regularly. So I do wonder if this way we have it structured now could be considered arbitrary. But the fact that we do some sort of regular check-in maybe is commanded.
So, well, yeah. It's interesting because it is a man-made
right
process.
How we do it.
Yeah, some obviously are well, I don't even know if that's true. I was going to say some maybe are accurate to a specific event in history according to time, but was Jesus born on December 25th? It's hard to say. There's actually really good evidence that he was born on December 25th. Oh. I'll have to find the article and send it to you, but maybe it'll be down in the show notes description.
Wow.
Click like and subscribe. That's what you do. Smash that like button. That's what you say when you're on TV.
Oh, okay.
Or phones. Do you watch YouTube on your phone?
Probably more than I do on a computer. Usually I watch TV on Adam's monitor when he's doing something while he's working on something, and I wander in for a quick question, and then I stop and I watch his whole video.
Gotcha.
That's usually how I watch
see.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like watching on my phone. It's too small. But I'm older, so.
You're old.
I guess. I'm getting snickering in the background. All right. So anyway, it's smash the like button. That's what you say when you're on YouTube.
Good
or
to know.
Whatever platform we're on. If you're on a podcast software, you subscribe or like or heart the feed, and then new updates will just come to your phone or other listening device, whatever that is. Okay. But where were we? We're talking about whether or not you're a bad Christian for not doing the church calendar. Did God command us to observe certain things in the New Testament? Because Paul says, don't let anyone look down on you because of festivals and new moons, and I don't know.
I am not arguing that it's exactly what it is, but now I'm trying to think of examples. But when we were definitely told to go tell people about when Jesus arrived as a baby. And so, of course, in the moment, that was like tell people the Messiah's come. But I do wonder if that carried over to, like, we're still supposed to tell about Jesus was born as a baby, even though we're also telling the story
Yeah.
about Easter.
I would say, I'm trying to think of what would be an example of something that we're required to continue to revisit. And the closest I can come off the top of my head is celebrating the Lord's Supper.
Mm-hmm.
As Jesus says, do this in remembrance of me. But not necessarily like marking a specific time. Now, we do on Maundy Thursday, because within the church calendar, you also have like little mini calendars like Holy Week. But I think I would probably say this. I would tend to lean towards it's good because you don't want to lose those pivotal moments in your story, which is really we're part of God's story and his narrative. And there is this thread through the scriptures that shapes and molds us. And recalling those key events is part of being brought into that narrative, right? Because it might change the way we think and live when we revisit these things. So I would probably land on it's better to do the church calendar, but don't be a slave to the church calendar, which is important because we're gonna mess with Advent this year. And I'm not sure I can handle it, but I'm gonna get behind it.
You can still have candles.
I know. We're moving Advent one week early this year because the fourth Sunday of Advent is Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And that's hard when you have Christmas Eve service at 1:00.
You definitely
on
would lose some
Sunday.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go out, get lunch, and come back for Christmas.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't want to lose Advent, so we're
won't
like,
lose
we'll
Advent.
just move it all up a week.
Yeah.
And if you see me in the front just with a slight twitch, that's why. Okay.
The liturgical.
Watch for the twitch.
Well, that's why, like, the 12 days of Christmas, I read that, and it's having someone, not even being like a church worker, but someone who works at a church. I'm like, ooh, that makes sense. Because I can tell you, the first year that I was working here and it was Christmas, our Christmas decorations didn't get up until halfway into December. Like, I felt like I had a lesser Christmas because I was, like, so busy about prepping, like, doing Advent stuff. Then, like, some really smart church worker was like, we're going to start Christmas on Christmas and go for 12 days afterwards. That's
Yeah,
my
there's a
theory.
gradual buildup.
Yeah.
Part of that's probably functional manpower, but some of it's very intentional. Like the manger gets up before baby Jesus goes in. Like Mary and Joseph are there, but baby Jesus doesn't appear till Christmas Eve.
Well, the cows still have to eat.
That's right. So, and of course you got other things like Vespers uses the chancel, so you can't get too much up in the way. And the children's Christmas program.
Very important.
Very important stuff. All right. So so do you do anything to observe the church calendar in like your personal, like we do things at church,
Yeah.
we mark the seasons, we change the colors of the paraments and stuff in the church. You can, when you walk into church, you can usually tell something's different. I like that we sometimes use that phrase with kids that, look and see what's different. We observe it in the church. Do you do anything to observe?
I was trying to think about it, like what I even could do. I don't know. Like, it's easiest around like Christmas, obviously, because there's Advent Bible studies, and so sometimes I'll do an Advent Bible study to be in preparation. Lent, I've historically tried the whole like giving something up for Lent, which I know is controversial, and like I do feel like that's a form of trying to observe it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, I know people at church workers will wear purple for Lent.
Guilty.
I don't own enough purple.
So yeah, well, I mean, interesting. Like, so your devotional life,
Yes.
your devotional practices could be influenced by the seasons of the church year. That's one way to keep it in your personal life, because, right, at Advent you might have a devotional. Maybe it's through the YouVersion Bible app or something. Maybe it's a book of some sort, and your devotional practice is around waiting or preparing for Christ's return, and you can observe it in your personal life that way. You could use this readings from the lectionary, or you could do something else, but it's that theme of Advent for Christmas. For Lent, there's this putting off of our sinful ways. Some people are putting off a vice. They're giving up a vice of some sort. It might be something little like chocolate Hershey Kisses in the office. It might be, which I got to try to not eat. And sometimes it's bigger, right? Sometimes as people take on a new practice that is spiritually enriching in Lent, that might be another way to go. Yeah, but personal devotional life is a great way. I do have a lot of seasonal apparel, a lot of purple for Lent, not a lot of white for Easter, but Easter I feel like you can get away with like pastels, yeah, bright colors. Like this would be a good Easter shirt.
That would be a good Easter shirt.
Yeah, and blue for Advent. My dream is to have 4 blue stoles for Advent, so that I can have a different stole every week of Advent, because it's a short enough season where I think that's doable. But stoles are so expensive, and I currently have 2. I have one that I wear 3 Sundays, and then I have a Guatemala. I think it's Guatemala. One of the young adult mission trips brought it back for me, and I wear that one for lessons and carols and children's program weekend.
You should talk to the quilting ladies.
I should talk to the quilting ladies. Yes.
They've got a retreat coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I keep a liturgical goatee.
I was going to wait to see if you brought that up.
It's
That's
not
an option for me.
It's it's not an option for you. It's a different church calendar than the typical church calendar, because it's like that's from Reformation. I grow my goatee at Reformation, and then I shave it off at Easter when I was in the South, because Jesus liked a clean face. It was gone. You're looking for the goatee. It is not here. It is gone. It turns out in Buffalo, it's still very cold at Easter some years. So I've decided the Holy Spirit likes a clean face in the north. So now it's for Pentecost. I changed my liturgical practice.
Ouch.
I know. Call me a bad Christian, a bad pastor.
I shan't.
Okay. Ooh,
Oh,
I
Alex.
shan't.
I know.
Yes. Okay. So we can keep these kind of things individually in the church. Should we get into the controversies now?
Ooh, let's.
Let's get into the divisive subjects. So what time? Oh, we got plenty of time. All
Okay.
right. So controversial topics related to the church calendar.
Do you have one?
So,
Oh, yeah.
well, so we said, one of the things you said, I think, early on was the church calendar is intentionally different than the civil calendar. And did you say why do you think that is? Did you say that? Did I hear that? Or was I remembering from notes or my own reading? Like, why keep an intentionally different calendar?
Well, I think for one thing, again, it follows the story of Jesus instead of following the story of the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So by starting a different point, it builds. It's a reminder that we're out of step also with like trying to be a people set apart, meaning trying to live according to the laws and rules of God. So just as it can be uncomfortable to be on a different timing from people, it can also be uncomfortable to not participate in certain sins or what have you. And then,
well, the people set apart though was the one I was trying to remember, because right, we as a people set apart, we live a different rhythm
right.
Than the world. We see time differently. We see creation differently. We function in a different space. And I think that's things like, this is two kingdom citizenship, that we are citizens of this world. So we keep a calendar of the world because we can't just do away with that calendar.
Right.
Right. But we are also citizens of a heavenly kingdom. And while we do wait for that second coming where we will one day only live in that kingdom, we recognize that we right now have a foot in each kingdom, if you will. And this special calendar is a reminder of this different rhythm, right? So here's the first controversial question. The Jewish people had their day of rest, their Sabbath, on a Saturday. The week began on Sunday, and there were the 6 days of creation through Friday, and then Saturday was the Sabbath. Which, by the way, did you know that a 7-day week was also foreign to the people of biblical times? Like the Jews were the only ones that were talking about a 7-day week. Everybody else was doing things like the solar calendar or the lunar cycle. Like they weren't keeping time in a 7-day fashion. That was a distinctly Jewish influx into the world. God kind of said, hey, this is how you're going to order yourselves, because you are a people set apart, a holy people. So they were already, the 7-day week was abnormal for the world. Of course, later it became standard in most parts of the world, but not Ethiopia. Did you know they have a different calendar?
I did not know that.
Different calendar, different language, like very different language from the rest of the world much of the world, because they were never colonized.
Good for them.
Yeah, we have friends.
Counterfeit.
Yeah, well, we have friends that are living in Ethiopia right now. They're with Lutheran Bible translators. They're missionaries, and they were in Ghana and or Uganda, one of the two, and they spoke English there, and it was, they had a much easier time. But in Ethiopia, because it had never been colonized, they have a very different language. Like, it doesn't learn like a Romance language, the Latin or Greek roots, and the calendar is completely different because they never switched to the Roman, Gregorian, Julian calendars. Anyway, so 7 days was different, right? They worshipped on Saturday. That was their Sabbath. When the Christian church got started after the resurrection of Jesus, we are, when do we gather to worship? And historically, they chose Sunday, the day of the resurrection. That's why the Sundays are the mini Easters. Now, for anybody who's not from our church that's listening to our podcast or watching on wherever we're at, right, we have Saturday night worship at 5:30. So just to give some context, we have worship at 5:30 on Saturday night and 2 services on Sunday morning. Should we, maybe are we and should we are two different questions. What are the pros of restricting worship to Sundays or moving it off of Sundays? And if you won't, I won't make you put a stick in the ground, but I'm gonna make the bold statement that ideal is worshiping on Sunday. Get me in trouble now. Go.
No, I'm thinking about it. I think the benefits to having a united day is sort of similar to, it would be kind of nice if all denominations, for instance, follow the liturgical calendar, and it's like, yay, we're all arm in arm skipping together, and that's great. So I could see where, like, in the new heaven and new earth, we do all have, we're in continuous worship, but like I could see where, like, church service, however that looks like there, it would be everyone's the same day, everyone gathers together, and it's like full unity. But also, like, we're told that we don't, like, when the disciples were, when the disciples were gathering wheat on the Sabbath and they're munching or whatever, they're having snack time, and they got in trouble because they were picking food on the Sabbath.
Plucking the grains of wheat,
Plucking grains of wheat, which would be really hard not to be able to fiddle with grass on a certain day of the week. But regardless, and Jesus is like, that's not the point of the Sabbath. Like, the point of the Sabbath is just having a regular rhythm of rest. Mm-hmm. And I feel like rest and worship, like, there should be a rhythm, but it doesn't have to be the same rhythm. I'm also super conscious of the fact of, like, essential workers. Like, I know some people who work on the railroad, and, like, good luck telling them
you got to worship on Sunday.
You can't work on Sunday. They're like, buddy, I can't even avoid working at 3 a.m. So you think I can get Sunday? Like,
yeah,
that's part of it. And I'm not saying, I don't think God's telling us not to have railroad workers.
No, he's not.
You try telling the preschoolers we can't have trains anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Preschoolers everywhere would be devastated without trains. Yeah, no, it's interesting because obviously, I mean, we have Saturday worship.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think maybe you're hitting on an important aspect of this is, like, more important than it only being on Sunday, which there are a lot of good reasons to make worship your regular day of worship on Sunday. There are reasons why some people can't. Is to get into the habit of that one, this is my day of worship. Mm-hmm. and keeping your life on that calendar. Because I think what happens, and this is a somewhat I don't know, maybe this is the kind of point that people might be like, oh, come on now, that's not really how this goes. But like, if I'm picking and choosing where to fit God in a particular week, am I ordering God around my schedule in my life? God, it's convenient this week that I worship on Sunday instead of Saturday. Or in the season of Lent, well, now that we have the Wednesday night service, I'm going to count that because then I have my full weekend. And, am I ordering my life around God and his rhythm where I keep a consistent day? Or am I saying, God, I'm going to fit you into my life when I feel like it best works for me? And that's hard because you have people who can't, they can't necessarily just take off every Sunday morning for church or every Saturday night. Like maybe they always work on Sunday and they usually worship on Saturday, but there's some Saturdays where they can't be there.
Yep.
Or maybe it's Monday in some churches. Have they Monday night church, or they always year round have Wednesday church? Local church here that my kids go to school at their school, they have Wednesday night church every week, and it's whatever was Sunday then happens on Wednesday for the people who can't be there on Sunday. And is that a subtle way that I'm kind of shaping God in my image as opposed to being conformed to his image? I love our Saturday service, by the way.
I know you do.
They're some of my favorite people.
I know.
But I think what you said about keeping the rhythm
Yep.
and being consistent in the day of worship, there's probably value to that. I mean, like if you think about like little things that we do that shape our hearts in certain directions and mold us in a certain way, these seem like somewhat trivial things when you think about it. And yet little things over time have a big impact on, where we end up. Like maybe this is a different example, but same space. I will worship in person when it's convenient, but I'm not going to go out of my way to try to get there because I could just worship online if, like today, I'm just not feeling it. I'm just going to stay home. Now, it's a different situation than somebody who can't be in person. Right? I think about some homebound members or people who have illnesses that prevent them from coming. Maybe they can't be here in person. Right? But if I can be here in person, but I'm making decisions around my worship life based on when it's convenient, are these little things starting to shape and mold my picture of who God is?
Right. Well, and it's also, in that specific example, you're not fully valuing what God values, because God values not only the fact that you're hearing the word and you're singing along to yourself, but also the fact that you're gathering with his people. And so, like, you're dropping part of it. You're like, God, I'll do these two things, but I won't do that third thing. Like that, in that instance, is interesting. What was I going to say? Oh, one of the quotes that, it's not a Bible quote, but like, that I've heard that this reminds me of is, you don't rise to the level of the occasion, you fall to the level of your training. And so, like, we're essentially training ourselves to be in a rhythm of worship and rest, and then go out. Like, you rest and worship and rest on Sunday, and then you go out into the world. And then you come back and you worship and rest. And so that you don't rest and worship at all during the week. But, like, you're building up the strength, so then when you get to the hard times, like during COVID, it was really easy to not do church at all, online or otherwise, because everything's loosey-goosey. And if you don't have any, the worldly calendar kind of fell out down from the floor.
I have no idea what day it is in COVID.
Right,
like, oh, it's a school day? I don't know.
It doesn't, but you still had the church calendar in that time. So if you were synced up to the church calendar, it didn't matter that the worldly calendar fell to the floor.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a weird incident that we got experienced in our lifetime. I say that. I'm not saying I was changing out the paraments in my home during COVID. I'm totally guilty of that. But like,
well, and we all are. I mean, I'm guilty of that too, where I'll, if we're traveling and we're not in a place where we can get to a church or something, that we'll watch church, we'll worship online with First Trinity as we're driving somewhere. And I mean, those things happen, and to all of us. Like, I mean, I'm a pastor, and I sometimes don't end up in church on Sunday morning because life happens, right? But it is maybe it's just being in tune with that and thinking about our motives and our practices and how those things are shaping us. And the church calendar provides some structured ways of keeping us mindful of God's time and God's rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, do you want another controversial topic?
Oh, sure.
By the way, if you're watching or listening, down in the comments, or you can send us an email. How should they email us? I don't know. You can
Office
email
at First Trinity might be the easiest.
Office at First Trinity. I love it. Office at firsttrinity.com will get you an email that one of us will read, or both of us. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on these things, because I think they're not easy answers. No. I mean, they're complicated questions, so we're not going to get into an answer. But we hope you'll think about those things and tell us what you think.
Yeah.
Or down in the comments below. Okay. Okay, second one then. Church, we have a calendar that has our own festivals and holidays and commemorations. Yeah, we and do you know why we limit the festivals and stuff that we do?
Yeah. So what I was reading as an LCMS, feasts and festivals are for people who had direct interactions with Jesus, like in the Bible, and then commemorations are from people who are either from the Old Testament that we still think should be recognized in stories. Or in the case of LCMS, Lutheran, that we will also recognize people who happened after the Bible, who we still think had significant contributions, including like, who I looked up someone.
Like Martin Luther.
Like Martin Luther, or Athanasius of Alexandria, who defended the full divinity of Jesus Christ so fiercely, the Athanasian Creed was named after him. Fun fact.
He took some heretics to task. Yes, he was a the church fathers are quite feisty. Yeah, Irenaeus was famous too for really attacking Gnosticism, that's another subject. But
that sounds
needless to say, Irenaeus would be a welcome voice today.
I think we could have a fun.
Not welcome. People won't like what Irenaeus has to say, but he was full on against the Gnostics. Okay, anyway, that's a total diversion that we're not going to get into.
But in another episode, we could.
We could get into another episode, yes.
Yeah.
Put it down, Irenaeus and Athanasius. That'll be a lit episode. Do they still say lit? It says lit?
I don't know. I just read an article the other day that apparently people don't know what hipster means anymore, and I felt so old.
Wow.
Apparently the term hipster originated in 2003, and it's 20 years old, and now college students don't even know what it means. And I'm like, I thought people were still saying that, but they weren't.
Oh, man.
They're not.
Okay, I'm going to cross that out. All right, so here's the next controversial subject. How do we handle national holidays in the church year? So the biggies are things like Mother's Day and Father's Day.
What about 4th of July?
4th of July and Memorial Day are big ones. Like, do you bring those kind of festivals into the church, or is there a way, and what are the pros and cons of reappropriating those those civil holidays to do something different than what the civil holiday does? Now let's take July 4th, because that's a good example, because I think Father's Day, Mother's Day is a little more personal for people. But let's talk about July 4th. So what are the pros and cons of letting July 4th influence our worship life, our seasonal calendar?
So I feel like there's a difference between, as a congregation, celebrating the 4th of July and as a congregation talking about the 4th of July seasonally. Like, learning what the church's approach to nationalism and pride for our country and serving our country, whatnot, versus, yay, isn't America great? Like, I feel like there's a difference between the two. And so, like, I could appreciate having a seasonally appropriate or relevant, for lack of a better term, discussion versus celebrating.
Because it is happening, whether you
Exactly.
observe it in your church calendar or not, it doesn't change the fact that July 4th is happening.
We're in the world.
Yes, in
Yeah.
the world, but not of the world. Yeah,
Not of
good
the world.
point. Yeah. I mean, ignoring it is hard because everybody else it's a cultural touch point that everybody else is talking about. I always feel a little weird, if I'm honest, like some of the patriotic hymns and songs that we don't do a lot of that. I think one year I picked hymns and I didn't pick anything, and somebody mentioned it to me that, oh, all right, and somebody mentioned it to me, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's important to people.
I think part of my discomfort might be the fact that, like, again, something I'm guilty of too, because I learned more about this when researching for this episode, is like, we don't make as big of a deal for Christ the King Sunday as we do for 4th of July. Or I don't know if we are as entirely guilty of this at our congregation. I think it depends maybe on the year. But like in general, as a Christian church, like as a general Christian, I hear more about 4th of July being celebrated and recognized than Christ the King, which is the end of the church calendar and is when we recognize you were talking about the dual citizenship, our citizenship to kingdom of God, where Jesus is king, as opposed to 4th of July celebrating our earthly kingdom. So I think that's where my discomfort comes in.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're at an hour. Did you know that?
I'm sorry.
It's already been an hour.
I know we should.
I got the cue from the producer.
Yeah.
Producer Jim is here from Chatting with Chuck. So
Yep.
he's got wonderful mics and camera system, and he said, you're at an hour.
And a clock. He's got a clock.
He's got the
apparently.
clock. Somebody,
Yeah.
You know what? Somebody has to have the clock. We should get a clock on set.
should.
I mean, not on set, like offset, where
Yeah.
we can see
Right
it with
there.
like a timer or something.
Yeah.
And then when I start talking too much, you'd be like, we gotta go. We gotta go.
Eat the cereal.
Eat the cereal.
Yeah. It was a meme going around at one point.
Oh.
I think someone was like, I don't know if they were excited or if they were trying to say speed up, but it looks like they're eating cereal.
Okay.
It's
Eat
not
the
a very
cereal.
current meme. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good
Yeah.
to know. I
Yeah.
learned something today. What did we learn today? That's a segment on a podcast I listen to with my kids.
That sounds like the ending of a VeggieTales.
Yeah.
They have
Well,
a
it is kind of
song.
the ending of a VeggieTales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is just like VeggieTales.
Okay. We're not going to get into what did we learn today
Okay.
because we got to get out of here. So, we have some sort of wrap up that we do at every episode, but we don't know what that is yet because this is the first. So for now, we're just going to say, I guess, goodbye to
Yeah.
everybody. Thank you for listening. If you have, again, feedback, maybe you have some thoughts on some of these controversial questions, you can email again to office@firsttrinity.com. And you can find links and merchandise. Do we have merchandise yet? No.
We're working on it.
We're working on merchandise.
Kelsey's got Cricket.
All right, perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe we'll sell merchandise.
Yeah, maybe
Sell is a strong word, but anyway, there'll be goodies and stuff at firsttrinity.com, I guess.
Or at the coffee hour.
Or at the coffee
If you
hour.
listen to this episode, you come swim by coffee hour. We'll get you a snack.
One of us will be there serving.
I wasn't guaranteeing that. I feel
Okay.
like we can maybe tap in.
All right. Well,
Coffee
hey,
later.
it's been great.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
Yeah, it
What
has
did you think of it?
Um,
Only good thoughts.
no, I think it's been good. I think it's been good. I might not feel as good about it once I listen to my own voice on recording.
Oh, yes. Have you watched much of yourself on TV?
No, I avoid it.
Ooh, yeah, that'll be a fun episode. We can talk about how we feel about watching our own episodes.
Oh, I might be sick that day.
Okay. All right. Thanks, friends. Send us your feedback. Office@firsttrinity.com. We'd love to hear what you're thinking, or leave it down in the comments below.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Have a good week.